There we go. We're officially recording.
Cool.
All right. Well, for everybody watching this on recording, we're recording it live, but it is just us for now. We'll see. We're going to try and get people to come on in here. Thanks for checking out. Thanks for checking out Cerebral Threads here. I got my brother, Paul Stamper, who volunteered to be the first person. I really appreciate that, by the way.
No problem.
It's not easy to get people to come talk.
Yeah, it'll be a slow start.
Yeah, no, I believe you are correct.
Yeah.
So I was posing questions on Facebook when I did that. Did any of that interest you, or is there anything in particular on your mind right now because of politics? Or I mean, I know the Attorney General Barr was grilled today. Did you end up seeing any of that, or?
No.
I got you.
I'm playing video games.
True. No, I hear you. That's true. I guess I knew that. Well, I was doing both. I was watching it while playing. Okay. Well, yeah. Let me. I'll pull that right back up. Because I couldn't remember. I was saying things like, do you find it confusing if I say things like all money is a currency, but not all currency is a money?
I mean, I've heard the concept before.
All right. Okay. And that I don't believe in God, but I do believe in church. Does that make sense? Yeah. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think people underplay what the Bible and religion did positive up till now in history. It was the only book to learn how to read, was the only book that got everybody on the same page,
That's a good one. Yeah.
There's a lot of our history that was based on we all bought into the same book, so
Right.
and there's been really charismatic leaders that led something horrible without religion. So I don't think religion
Right.
is particular in anything bad or good. I think it can definitely veer really hard, and people's blind faith is dangerous. But I wouldn't just say religion. So I think I'm very similar. I'm pro-religion. I'm not religious, but I'm pro everyone getting together on Sunday and getting into the same page. I'm pro a lot of the things religion can do,
Right.
But, I won't defend some of the horrible things that's happened in the name of religion. Yeah, that was screwed up. That was,
Right. Yeah. 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 I don't think you have to accept everything that was done wrong to be able to say that. I think you're right. Oh yeah, it's an attitude I've come to actually later, like only in the last 4 or 5 years that I start to actually turn and think, you know what, I think you're right. Yeah, and I think that's why I like to say it that way, that I believe in the church but not in God.
It's funny, when I took Western civilization, it's a class of all the histories. If you ever take a history class,
Right.
Western civilization is basically Greek-Roman history up to like 1800 or 1700s. Or no, 1460. I forgot what, there's like a cutoff in classes that was kind of arbitrary.
Right.
But one of the things they do is history has different reference materials, and they're very clear that the Bible is a reference material. And when you match it up with, say, what ancient Rome had and what the Sumerians or whatever the cultures were there, if you can get 2 or 3 to agree that this event happened around this time, that's when we start going, hey, this is history. So the Bible is also really important. Like, it did track certain things that in a way did happen that I think is important because we can cross-reference. There was a guy named Jesus that the Romans clearly stated they hated its guts. He was a troublemaker, and they put his ass to death. You know, and the Bible references it, and the Sumerians reference it. So, or I think it's the Sumerians. Don't quote me on that. But anywho, so I think the Bible's really important.
You just quoted yourself.
Yeah. I think it's the Sumerians, but I'm not sure if that culture would have been right around that time. But anywho,
I got you.
So I think the Bible is a really important historical document too. So,
yeah, no, that's great. Excellent. Well, I think the only other things I was talking about was Trump, really, but I don't see you as someone that wants to yell and scream at me about Trump.
No.
I was even inviting screams.
I think there is some things we could agree on. Like, I'm not into calling him racist because I don't think people are racist. I think you can make racist comments. And I think people should judge you on how often those comments happen. But what I don't like about calling people racist, it leaves no redemption. It leaves no interpretation. It leaves no apology. I screwed up. Oh, my bad. I didn't know. You know, and it also takes away that, you know, racism is a definition. It is what it is. You can be racist on accident. You can be racist thinking you're complimenting. You know, so I don't like calling him or anyone else racist.
All right.
You know,
yeah, there's a lot in there. I don't know if. I mean, I think people can be racist. I don't know if I agree with people just can't be racist, but I do understand what you're saying. But I guess just the basic definition, people, I mean, there are people who feel they're racist superior just because of their skin color, and that I think is racism in itself. The Spencer Nelsons of the world, I guess, Mr. The Nazi that got punched on camera like 3-4 years ago.
I remember that.
He seems like a pretty serious racist.
You know, and I'll give credit to someone who says, "Hey, I am racist." Well, you know, I'm not going to try and talk you out of what you're saying is in your heart. But I just don't like the concept because, you know, think of the people that were Nazis that are no longer Nazis.
Right.
You know, they're changed their actions. You know, it's tough to say that they were racist and not now they're racist. You know, when that line happened. I don't know. And I understand, like, I wouldn't, you know, this isn't the hill I would die on. So if everybody's like, I think Trump's racist, I'm not mad at you. Like, that's not the one I'm going to.
Right.
Lots of things we could argue. That one, I'm like, all right, cool. You want to call it that. It just seems, it hurts the path of redemption when, you know, you label someone, they are definitely racist or definitely this or definitely whatever.
What about that Nick Cannon rant recently? Did you see that?
Yeah.
I thought that was racist.
Yeah. I mean, I understand. My view on that whole thing was like, all right, so yes, in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, a lot of the bodega owners and small wares people were Jewish in the Black community. This is true. They were some of the few people that would go into that community and have that start money and do it, and that's cool. So I understand where they visualized it was the Jewish community that took money out of their neighborhood. Yeah, I guess, but you're blaming the middleman. You know, you're blaming a street level person for, I believe that institutional racism does exist. Yeah, maybe Jews were part of that institution at a certain level that was really direct and angering towards you. I get that. But I think to blame the whole Jewish race is ridiculous. Silliness. You know, back to the silliness of racism in general. So I don't agree at all with him. But I do understand where there's a lot of anger in the Black community towards people. Yeah, I bet. But I think blaming Jews is losing your focus. You know, focus on the big system, beat the system, not an individual player in it that that you interacted with.
All right. Yeah. What about the white racism? I mean, I hear you talking about the Jewish, and I noticed that was that was the focus for a lot of media too. That's what a lot of people I heard also talking about. Like, what about all the white racism? He said, like, what, a sentence about Jews, and then kind of threw them on in with the whites, and everyone focuses on the Jewish racism. But what about the white racism? Did you see that, or did that not seem racist?
I mean, define racism.
I guess just your basic,
You know,
feeling that your race is superior to someone else's because of your skin color or race. Genetically, you are superior.
Yeah, see, I would say no, that's not a good definition of racism. I think you having power is a very important part of that.
I got
think
you.
what
All
you're
right.
naming is just
Like
random
critical
bigotry
race theory.
Also
it's like
horrible.
You can't, right? Like critical race theory, you can't, whites can't be racist. You can't be racist against whites because they hold the power, and if it was a different color that held the power, then they would be the racists, sort of thing. Sounds like critical race theory.
Yeah. For me, yes. And it's not just critical race theory. That's from sociology. Sociology is very clear with that term and what they mean when they say racism.
And that's not what they mean?
Definitely see it means not what you're saying,
I got
the
you.
more casual definition of just, I think my race is superior.
Right.
You know, in sociology, one of the biggest things they push is, I'm talking about it when one group is in charge of another, and I'm talking about when it's not even mean or cruel, like comment, hey, he's Asian, he must be good at math. You may think that's a comment or a compliment, but you are taking a group of people, putting them all as one and giving them one trait from an individual you may or may not know, you know.
But where would you draw the line between stereotypes and racism? If the stereotype is true, why does it turn into racism? Where's that line? As in, can I make an assumption about somebody based on their culture or race, or even where they grow up? Or are all assumptions based on those type of characteristics off limit? That's what I have a hard time with, is where is the line when I can be stereotypical about someone, especially if I have no other information about a person?
I think that would really, you know, that's a pretty broad question. I don't know. I guess it depends on how well you know them. In general, I don't try to make assumptions or address stereotypes of people. That would be my advice.
Right.
Don't assume an Asian is good at math, or a
black
right.
No,
or
doesn't
any
mean
of
your
them.
example.
I mean, that would be what I would shoot for.
So all stereotypes would feel like racism to you? Is that, you get what I'm saying about?
I don't know. That's a really overarching thing. I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that.
If like men pay more in insurance because we wreck a lot more cars, right? So that's, you know, a trait, something we, you know, if people were to make fun of crazy teenage boys saying you guys wreck cars, you know, like they're crumpled paper, no, you can't have my car. Do you get what I mean? Like, some stereotypes about groups are true, and I think we're missing the ability to use those distinctions and sometimes the just correct discrimination to filter people and things in our lives when we're worried about every stereotype turning into racism. And so that line is really tough, and I think active in people's lives.
No, I think you're just mixing a bunch of stuff together. Okay. I think you're just jamming everything together. Absolutely not. Who cares? There's no racism having to do with whether your car are different rates for a dude.
I didn't say racism. I said
stereotype. That's none of those things.
No, I didn't say racism. I said that's a stereotype, and it's obviously not racism. That's my point.
Define stereotype.
A common characteristic of a group or culture or community.
Stereotype.
I guess I don't know what the.
Would assume that it doesn't necessarily mean it's true or not true. It's just something that they assume is true.
Okay, maybe I could be wrong about the definition of stereotype.
Yeah.
Okay. So what am I missing on the definition of stereotype? What? That there's any truth in stereotypes, that part of stereotypes is not real characteristics, that stereotypes in general are.
Yeah, when you're comparing that to an insurance stat, that's got nothing to do with
racism. Right.
That's an actual
right.
stat of whether you crash more or not. I think stereotypes don't necessarily have to be true at all. That's why they're stereotypes.
Okay. Well, anyways, my stereotype, the part of the stereotype, I must not have said it very well, was when you say, oh God, my teenage boy, hell no, I'm not giving teenage boy a car. Teenage boys are crazy, they wreck cars. That's a real mild stereotype of teenage boys. I was given the insurance as the statistical proof. It is something that happens, and when you stereotype teenage boys as being reckless, that's an okay stereotype. I was trying to give a mild one to like say, where's the line then between that and saying Asians are really good engineers, and I'm going to go as a business owner, go try to find someone in China or Japan or Asia and try to get their best of the best because of how good they are at engineering. Or if I wanted a really good piano and I decided I want a German piano maker, they make really good pianos, I want a German piano maker. At what point is it okay to use stereotypes to be making decisions like that? Or I guess stereotype, I don't know another word for stereotype that you, except for what I'm describing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. We should look up what the definition of stereotype is.
Okay, go ahead. Did you get my point though? That
no, that's why I said you should look up the definition of stereotype. No, I think those are completely different. You're just mashing everything together.
What's completely different?
To assume Asians may be good at math or not is a stereotype.
Right. I said engineering to be more specific.
It's not a stereotype. That is something that's actually good. Men getting in more wrecks is a provable stat. These are not stereotypes. These are not the same thing. You keep combining them and then saying that there's a tough line. I don't think there's a tough line at all. No.
So Asian cultures excelling in engineering isn't a true stat either? Because I was basing I said engineering on purpose, not like math, to go with something that is statistically provable.
Is it?
Yes.
Show me that.
Show it to you? Okay.
Because if there is a huge, great school, because I wouldn't think Asians in general, there's billions of Asians. Now you're talking China, you're talking India.
Okay, how about
them having a huge plus in engineering to where you would just pick that country as an engineer? It just doesn't sound plausible.
I said Asian cultures, and then I named a few different countries that are, what did I say, Japan, China, and I forgot who else I said. I named a couple of countries within Asian culture that are really dominant in engineering fields.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, did you get the definition of, oh, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting I got a microphone too. Everybody who's listening to, if I keep moving away, it's because I'm not paying attention to that. I'm supposed to be in front of the mic. I got to scoot the tablet closer. So the definition of stereotypes?
A widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type or person or thing. Right.
Oversimplified, not untrue.
Yeah.
So the oversimplified is Asians are good at math, and that is oversimplified and oversimplified, silly. But to say that some communities are better at one job than another isn't, and what's the line there? Do you get what I'm getting at? That I feel like there are specific.
I just don't think it's a hard line. I don't have problems with
gotcha.
this line. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I hear your logic. I think you're wrong. I know when not to assume shit about Asians. I go way out of my way not to assume things about people. Just do that. You don't have to have this really confusion. I think the confusion you're talking about is just made up on the right.
Oh, I get you. The differences I'm seeing between cultures you think are made up on the right?
Nope.
Is that what you're saying? No. Differences between races?
This really hard line. Where's this line? I'm so confused. I think that theory is made up on the right. It's not hard. Try not
so,
to.
Well, if I'm really, no, okay. I was trying to, right, I was trying to go from myself. So I was saying it is confusing for me where that line is. So could you entertain the thought just because I am confused? I know that you say that there's.
I'm not going to entertain. Like when
okay.
you want to entertain something, I don't see it at all. It's not hard. Try not to stereotype. It's not hard. It's not a confusion. It's not hard.
Not at all. No stereotyping.
Try not to. That's all you got to do. But this tough line, it's so confusing. There's so much things they're telling me. No, they're not. No.
They're so much confusing. They're telling me. Who's they? I'm confused again.
I heard the same argument that the line is very tough through a lot of people on the right.
Oh, yeah. Nice. All right. See, so I'm not alone on that. You just don't believe it. I get it.
I've been very clear on that. I'm sorry.
Okay. I got you. I misunderstood you. All right. It is a good thing there is spell check in the room.
I have waves of printing stuff. I write it, then I spell check it, then I read it. I usually have to correct all 3 times.
All right. Okay. Right. I gotcha. Well, that'll make it hard to talk about. Never stereotype. I get that. What about discrimination? Do you feel the same way, that there's no reason to ever discriminate? And I mean that from...
There's no reason for ever to do that. What I said was try not to. This isn't hard. The line isn't confusing.
It was just a question. It's just a question, dude. Okay. Yeah, so yes, you do think there are times. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I don't know. It depends where you're really going with that. That's once again a pretty broad question. What do you mean?
Let's narrow in on it. When Reverend Jesse Jackson, that famous time, he said even he felt relieved when he turned around, heard some kids walking behind him, and it was just a bunch of white kids. And I think that there's this point of discrimination also. Like it is discriminatory if I turn around and see 4 young black kids or 4 young Hispanic kids, and they're tatted and their pants are down and they're dressed a certain way. I don't know them, but the side of me that has protection side can't help but immediately have discriminatory thoughts of this could be dangerous. Does that make sense? Where does that kind of discrimination in being discerning or stereotyping basically these kids behind me, is that wrong in that moment too, or is it not times when or can you agree that, at a time like that, it is okay to use the basic, simplest form of stereotype before you get to know them?
Sorry, that's a lot to unpack. That's why I don't like to call people racist. I think the definition of racism should definitely be something to where it's not that you're mad, It's not that you hate people. Fear is just fine. You know, doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Right.
You feared 4 people behind you. All right, so be it. Fear is fear. It's how you act on that fear. Whether you feel the fear, I don't give a shit.
Right.
Feel whatever you want to feel. Like, you know, once again, I don't know what's in your heart. The problem, I don't think, is for people that you describe sneaking up on somebody. I would say it's when it's just, you know, a couple that are black people just out and about, not dressed and whatever, or tatted up or whatever.
Right.
And they get the same reaction. That's where the problem is.
But I don't give them the same reaction.
A lot of people do. That's the problem with.
How do you know that? How do you know that most people react the same way, regardless of the way the people address them, or carrying themselves? Because I don't know that that's true.
Because I didn't say that.
Okay. Try it again. I must have misunderstood you.
The problem isn't that you're taking the worst example, and that feared me. It's that when you have fears and you play on that, then when it's just black people by themselves, because you've accepted that fear and you're not trying to resist it, you're just making excuses for it. You're now just afraid of black people in general because you're not used to it. And as soon as you start making excuses and saying, hey, well, that's just the way it is, I'm not even going to try, it's easier to walk back in your shell. No, it's fine to be afraid. Everybody's afraid. It's how you act on it.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess what I'm not agreeing with is that just a normal black dude walking around who doesn't have his pants down to his ankle with his girlfriend, they're dressed normal, they're not being, they're not dressed the way I described or not tatted, wouldn't get the same reaction. You know what I mean? People aren't just turning around and going, oh, black people. That's what I'm saying. I think they are reacting more to the tats and the clothes, and not just regular black people are getting that. I don't believe that's true.
No, I disagree.
What's that?
No, I disagree. Even in downtown Chicago, after like what, 10 p.m., black people couldn't get a cab. It wasn't about whether they were dressed nice or bad. Just after a certain time, because of fear, people wouldn't pick up black people at night in cabs in downtown.
Yeah, but after 10, 11 o'clock at night in downtown Chicago, the chance of getting robbed or mugged is increased because of the time of night and the way people are drinking. So at night, people might put up more barriers to what they're willing to pick up. And if that, and part of that is black people sitting on a corner, how do you know it's also not Hispanic? It's not so also girls who are sitting puking on a corner. I'm just, that's part of the stereotyping that, you know, I think we're bad mouthing. I mean, if I'm a cab driver at a certain time of night, I might choose to stop picking certain groups of people because the chance of getting robbed or getting my car puked on goes up. So I would make those decisions. But it doesn't mean the same way you're saying that it has to be racism or discrimination.
More dangerous. Of course that's racism. What?
Say it again.
Why would picking up black people be more dangerous?
Right. I said different groups. I said also Latino or black. What if they're dressed the way I'm talking about, or they look drunk?
They're dangerous in that they're going to rob you. Yes, that's a racist act. Not to pick up someone because they're black is a racist act. Not to pick up someone Spanish is a racist act. Not to pick up a drunk girl is your common choice and has nothing to do with her race.
All right, but you're right. But if I'm not choosing, like, I'm sorry, if you're choosing not to pick up somebody who's black only because they're black, that's racist in a way. But if you're choosing it because, in a way, if you're choosing not to pick up somebody who's black because of the way they're dressed, or because they too are drunk, or because they're yelling, or because they open the door are rude or whatever, or if the person's Hispanic or a white jock. You don't want two big ass jocks. I just think that taxi drivers often make choices based on things that are probably pretty smart and within their self-interest all the time. And I think just saying when they don't pick up black people, the choice is because they're black, as opposed to things they might fear about that person. And if you're a cab driver, you've been robbed more by minority communities than white people. So after 10 o'clock saying, you know what, I'm just going to pick up drunk white people because at least it's just puke, totally makes sense.
I didn't say black people dressed in a certain way. I said at night in Chicago, black people can't get picked up no matter how they're dressed. That's how it was through the 90s. That's how it was through the early 2000s.
You just know that's how it was?
After night after night. My the two other managers at Hunt Club dared me twice. We experimented all the time. This is common knowledge. You don't believe it? That's cool. I'll try and do some research and send it to you.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I'm not saying that cops sometimes don't pick up black people at night. I'm saying they don't pick up black people at night in Chicago. At least they didn't during the 90s and the early 2000s.
All right. All right. I'll write it down. No. Blacks get cabs in 90s, 2000s, downtown.
I don't know. I just don't work in the industry anymore, so.
Yeah. No, I'm sure the way everyone wants statistics on race and participation and all kinds of things from cabs to buses, I would not be surprised if there is a breakdown of cab usage and the numbers. And I would not be surprised to see that, no, after 10 o'clock, there are not zero. I would bet it's a pretty high percentage. But to say that there isn't a percentage of people not getting picked up after 10 o'clock who are black, I totally get that. I'm just saying, I don't think it was like a rule. I don't think it was all black people. And I'll bet many of those situations, they were making choices based on other reasons, not because their skin color was black.
That's great.
Okay. All right. Racist cabbies of Chicago. We'll have to, I'll write it down and I'll look some stuff up. We'll come back to that. I got you. Well, I don't think we're going to get anywhere on the cabbies. Yeah, I forgot what else I was looking up. So you see that as part of systemic racism, cabbie companies kind of unspokenly deciding not to pick up black folks after a certain time of night?
Yep.
Yeah, that's part of. So that's a racist company. What's the systemic part if it's just the racist company? Is it because they get medallions from the state? Do you feel that kind of pulls the state into it too? Like Illinois state?
I don't think it has to necessarily be the state. A system.
Oh, I got you.
College, it could be the local mine. It doesn't mean to be intentional. It doesn't have to be mean. Maybe these cabbies are just afraid. So be it. So you're afraid. But when there's an underlying issue, when something as important as a cab at night won't service black people, that puts you at quite a disability.
I guess. I mean, no cabs.
If I can, in the 90s before Uber, that was a big deal. If the train stopped, I think it's a big deal.
Right. Okay. I got you. What do you see in the country, or I guess the government, or you said systemic racism? You brought it up a couple times earlier, and so you see it more as can be in any system, as opposed to like a Jim Crow law or lunch counters, those type of things. Obviously systemic and part of the government, part of the system. But you see that in businesses, private businesses, and other businesses too, that they can have. What is there much about, like, I guess, American society that you don't think is tainted with systemic racism?
I would assume no.
No?
No.
I mean, of course, like, except,
I mean, maybe I haven't, gone through a checklist, but
right. I'm assuming you exclude obvious black-run, black-owned type empowerment groups, like your NCAAPs, or no, is that the basketball?
they're very similar. I'm not.
I can never get. You know which one I mean.
NCAACP. I think they were both NCAA for a while.
I got you. But how do you think groups like that avoid it?
What's up?
Systemic racism.
Well, back to our definitions of racism. I think racism.
Oh, right.
And have a power dynamic that you are in charge. So I'm okay if you want to argue like whether it's bigoted or not or whatever. Okay.
What's bigoted? Which part?
In terms of racism, all black colleges, isn't that what you used as an example just now? Asking if that was systematic racism? Or?
No, I said, how do they avoid systemic racism in those type organizations? Because I'm assuming you're not including them in groups, in the communities and systems and businesses and government things that are systemic racist.
I don't think they are.
All right. But I think you answered my question though, that again, back to the power issue, if you don't have the power, then you don't have the power to institute racism in a way that we see it on blacks today, right? Mm-hmm. If there's a good steel man of what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds close.
Right. Okay. What is that power? Even like maybe an example. Now, of course, I know you can't like say, that power is all of this.
Yeah.
But like, pick a department, give me a place to dig into, so to speak.
Chicago Fire Department.
Right.
Came under a lot of flack for being almost 100% white.
Right.
Maybe 10 years ago, I forgot how long ago, maybe longer than that. They hit the papers because there was someone saying the N-word and saying racist jokes over the radio, back and forth, the firemen were, and someone heard it. When they discussed with the firemen, how come there was no black people here, their basic answer was, well, it's kind of who you know, friends of friends. It helps to know somebody. Now, I've always got a job knowing somebody, so I'm not against that, and I get it. I'm not here to judge, but just because firemen had always been white around here, or for the most part been white, and then as people just hired their friends, it somehow got whiter. I don't know if it was intentional. I would assume not. But the system in itself became racist because there was more whites. They just hired their friends. The fire department wasn't sticking to a system of whatever your test scored, that's just it. They were given credit for certain people and friends, and Chicago got in a lot of trouble for it. So I think that was an example of the system being racist and not even being maybe a cruel system or on purpose. It just was.
So a black fire department that nepotism basically was keeping it majority black or all black is not racist, but white is because of the power structure of the state or the fire department, or is it just nepotism as opposed to systemic racism? Or is that a definition of systemic racism that I don't realize, just nepotism accidentally breeds systemic racism?
Nepotism definitely can. Would an all-black fire department not letting whites in be racist?
Not letting, because we were talking about nepotism, that it wasn't that they weren't letting them in, that
they were just hiring their friends and they happened to be black.
Right. Which I understand, because I applied to be a fireman and did not get in. I knew no one.
I know several people that have tried, and the only people I know that got on, they knew somebody. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of when you define racism as that power dynamic, there is a lot of interesting questions like that. If it was Gary, Indiana, and the entire town was black except for 10% was white, and whites couldn't get on the fire department, and everything around it was black. Yeah, I think that would be that one. Yeah, that could be a case of racism towards white people if black people were in the city council and the majority of the fire. Yeah, I think that could be. It's not really happens that much to where you got to worry about it.
Why do you think like a ratio like that 10-to-1 would solve it, though?
Pull that right out of my butt. I have no idea what do you mean?
If whites, in the example you gave, are 10% of the population and blacks are 90% of the population, but the fire station is 98% black and only 2% white, what is it about getting that 10% that takes away racism?
I don't know exactly when the percentage would be. And once again, I think you're focusing on things that aren't important. Try not to. Try parity the people. Try to get the fire department to parity the people in the local community. Just try. Where the exact percentage is, I don't know. I don't care. I don't think it's an important focus.
As long as it's not zero.
I don't know.
Well, then what are we talking about if you don't care about the numbers or how many?
Because you're saying, what's the difference between 10% and 2%? And I'm saying that's the wrong focus.
No, I'm talking about the equal outcome sort of point of it, as in if you're 10% of a community, then you should be 10% of the fire station, 10% of this and that. And of course, not exact, but a lot of what's going on in the racial diversity and racial parity movement, I thought, was getting to those percentages in a sense, right? Isn't that part of the movement?
We're definitely trying, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the numbers don't matter to you, but they matter to the movement, is I guess is what we're, because I thought you were supporting that, but it sounds like you're saying no.
I think when you say, hey, what's the difference between 10%, 2%, 3%, I don't think that's small of a percentage, and those kind of things are the important focus. Especially in Chicago, which is what, 37% black, and almost zero fire department is black. That's obvious. So, and so like, it's simple to look at that and be like, all right, we have a problem here. We got to non-parity. Now, what's the difference between 10% and 4%? I don't give a shit when it comes down to that. But when you're obviously 30%, there's obviously a problem here. And whether it was 26 or 24 or a couple percent, I don't care.
I think it matters because communities and cities and the government are enacting policies based on these ideas and these numbers, and people are getting in trouble for not matching certain numbers. And we see that in our educational system too, with suspension rates, so on and so forth. So I think, though I get that I get that you're saying the actual number itself doesn't matter so much as the really large disproportionate things that are obvious, kind of like, what's porn? I don't know, but I'll tell you when I see it sort of way. And it's for you, it's because I don't know why, how is your basing it? I mean, it's just more than zero. And I know that policies in this country are being created based on these numbers. So I wonder, what do you think about the fact then that the left is trying to push towards parity numbers?
I just think this argument leads to, as soon as you find a number, we say 25%. 25% parity because blacks are around 25% in Chicago. Then it sets up the, oh, well, it's 25, well, then 24 is wrong, and 26 is great, and 28, we change things. So I think it leads to an argument that's unimportant and doesn't matter. When you see these obvious things, you can attack it. And whether it's 2% off, 1% off, I think is the wrong focus. I'm sure there's a number smart people could sit down and aim for, yeah. But I think that's more just looking at the details to try and find an argument against it rather than any importance.
Well, if the numbers don't matter, then why is it even an argument then? If the numbers are useless, then why are we shooting for parity at all? And we just ignore the numbers completely and let fire stations hire who they want.
Exactly. That's the argument I said I didn't want to go down to, because it's silliness. It's silliness. When you have almost
only when it's obvious.
I'm not done. When you have 30% of black people and 0 in the fire department or close to 0 black, it's obvious and you should attack.
Why is it obvious? Why is it obvious?
What if it was like 12%? Is that good? I don't know, and I don't think it's a good focus of that argument. What's the exact right percent? I don't know. I would say close to parity. Try.
Well, I think it is a good thing to argue, and it's why I keep bringing it up. So 0. So you only think parity should be pushed for in the obvious, most extreme circumstances, and that's it. But you don't have a line for where it should stop, and you don't even want to talk about that line.
I don't say it has to be extreme. I say you should go for parity and
obvious. I'm sorry, the obvious ones.
Is the obvious one?
Right.
Your argument about, well, then what's that exact number is a bad focus to that entire movement and that entire focus. The focus should be, let's try and get parity. Let's work on that, not what the exact percentage needs to be.
What would parity be then in your situation? In the example you gave, 30% blacks and 100% whites in the local fire station, what would parity be at what point? Is there any percentage, or just start hiring people and we'll tell you when to stop?
Most laws and most of those things are brought into place because they're necessary, not because people are bored. If you shoot for parity and you get close to parity, I would be cool with you ending that law. But
right. So okay, I got you.
So
right.
What is that percentage? When do you stop?
Right. I got you.
I think it's just a switch of focus that's more of an arguing technique than getting to something important.
Right. So closer to parity when it's obvious, but exactly what number close to parity is not something that needs to be argued in a few percents.
I don't think you can get a specific number because things vary too much. To get a specific number for the fire department.
Well, how are you going to get anywhere near parity if you have no specific numbers, don't care about the numbers? I mean,
easy. You can start with the ones that are obvious, and that fire department was an obvious one.
Okay. All right. So if they got one black person out of 100, you'd be okay?
Yeah, try and get to that parity. Try.
So if it's 30%, try to get to 30.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Okay. All right. Yes. To the parity. Okay. All right. Do you think there are fields that there won't be enough people of a certain class, race, gender to fulfill a parity number, a quota, so to speak. Do you not see that there are plenty of spots in the world that are just not going to work? That doesn't, or do you see everybody is pretty much the same? And if given the right amount of education and nutrition and equal opportunity, so to speak, that basically anybody can do anybody's job in a sense?
The jobs that we push for parity aren't about whether you're 100% qualified. Many of these jobs we've never hired the very
fireman.
Best. So
that's a big qualification.
No. But when people haven't done it up till now, you can't use it as then a defense. So when who's the best qualified hasn't been what we did for the last 60 years. It's who you know and things like that. You can't then say, oh, well, only the best qualified. All right, maybe. But then again, you're saying that through all these years, there's no black people qualified enough to be a fireman. The jobs you pick, it's not like we're going to parity everything. Hey, there's got to be a certain amount of ice cream cones or blah, blah, blah. The law has focused on important leadership positions for the most part when looking for parity.
Okay. But I thought, yeah. Okay. All right. I don't agree on the parity thing. I think there's just too many jobs that are too specific to certain people, and in particular, I think that hits most of all on gender, more so than between blacks and many different job types that they're underrepresented in. And I would also, if I was to look into the fireman thing, which I'm gonna write that down. I would look into number of applications too. That's what I'd want to see, as opposed to just an empty house, if that makes sense. Because I do know plenty of black firemen, and I know a lot of black firemen that got in. I know a black fire chief. I know a black fire chief that tried to help me get into the fire department program, and it didn't work. Even his help didn't help me. So whether or not this particular area, because of nepotism, had more white people is proof of systemic racism. I think that's I don't think that's true. I think it's a terminology that's been created to describe something else. But I don't think it describes systemic racism in something like a firehouse. There's just too many other firehouses in the world that do have blacks in it. So maybe this fire station was, because of their nepotism, they kept bringing in bad people till it was bad. But I don't know. It's kind of like putting the hammer down on all fireplaces that have, fire stations that have a parity that isn't correct to the population around them, and saying they're all part of a systemic racism. And if they don't start changing that and not getting their friends and family hired, that they're participating in it, if that makes sense.
I don't agree, but yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. Why
don't
you agree?
Systematic racism, like you went right down the steps.
Right.
Nepotism on a group that started mostly white for a long time. You couldn't even be a fireman if you were black. That was a law, and all across the country there was a couple spots
during Jim Crow. You mean like far back as Jim Crow, right? Because we both talked about Jim Crow and we agreed that was systemic racism within the government. So, but we're talking about today.
We did talk about that.
I brought it up.
We probably do agree.
Bring it up.
Yeah, you said it in casual stuff there. I didn't know that was your example of the systematic. Blah, blah, blah.
That's a tough one. I keep bumbling it.
Yeah, so to just say, hey, it's nepotism, no. When this same mostly white in power position mirrors in police, it mirrors in your politics, it mirrors, we've had one black president, we had 44 non-black presidents. Until all these things get closer to parity, I would say, yes, the system's racist. It doesn't have to be mean. It can be, we just have it now, whether we're white or black, and so we don't want other people to get our power, whatever it is. When the system has started from the beginning, not allowing blacks to do stuff, yes, the system itself is racist until you get closer to parity.
Well, why don't we end it there?
Cool.
That was a good 45 minutes. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Nobody nobody sent me messages, so we didn't have any viewers or anything. But I'll see what I can do about editing this and cleaning it up a bit, get it online, and then we'll see what kind of feedback we get. Then I will look those things up because, yeah, wow. We do not agree on some things, that's for sure. Okay. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. That was fun.